Hello and welcome to CivilNet TV. My name is Mashar Khazarian. Over the last 2 months, you've seen many changes throughout the government in Armenia. With that, we have seen new ministers, new deputy ministers take their position, and at CivilNet, we've been trying to bring you those conversations to give you a sense of what is happening and the news that is involved. Today, we come with Babken DerGrigorian. Babken is the Deputy Minister of Diaspora. He is also the Economic Advisor to Deputy Prime Minister Tigran Avinyan. Babken, thank you and welcome to joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And so, Babken, now with the Ministry of the Diaspora, for the diasporan community, this has been a very talked about and discussed ministry. It's something that they've had a lot of interest in. One of the things that we want to start off with in asking you is the Ministry of Diaspora a ministry that is focused on Armenia or focused on the diaspora?
So, I think the Ministry of Diaspora in the past hasn't always been able to answer that question, hasn't really been able to find its place within this sphere. Today's Ministry of Diaspora is mostly focused on being a bridge between Armenia and the diaspora, going both ways. So it's both an Armenia-centric and a diaspora-centric ministry.
Then with that, there's been a lot of different conversations that come with that in terms of how the diasporan community wants to engage with Armenia, how they feel they should or can't engage. One of those items that have been discussed is the Bicameral Parliament. When these ideas come out, are these things that the ministry is also discussing? How do they look on these ideas that come from the diasporan communities and also just generally?
So this talk about the bicameral Parliament is it's not on our agenda. It's not something we're pursuing. What we are pursuing is figuring out the most effective way to engage with the diaspora. Now, keep in mind, we are a temporary government, but we are a government that came into power through revolution. And based on that revolution, we have certain value systems that we are going to be basing our policy around, namely legitimacy, transparency, and justice. So our engagement with the diaspora is likewise going to be based on those three principles.
With that in mind, and how you're going to move forward and move about in the process of the diaspora, previously with the Diaspora Ministry and then also just the groups that we see, there are organizations that do, that sometimes some of their programs overlap with what the Ministry of Diaspora is looking to do or has said that they're going to work on. How does the ministry intend to work with some of those organizations or some of those concepts that are out there?
Absolutely, you bring up a really good point actually, because often in the past we have seen an overlap, and we need to be very accountable for every luma that we're spending. And if we see that there are other organizations that are doing better jobs than the ministry, I think it's going to be much more effective and efficient to partner with them. But more broadly speaking, the ministry, I think, is not going to be so much an implementer as much as it's going to be a policy setting and policy making body going forward. So in that sense, we're going to be engaging with civil society, both in Armenia and in the diaspora, to realize the policies that we're making. And of course, even in the policy making process, we're going to make sure to engage with as many stakeholders in Armenia and in the diaspora as possible.
Do you guys, at this point, have there been any thoughts in terms of what some of those policies might be that you can discuss?
We are having discussions right now. We're actually right now going through a major reorganization of the ministry itself. Unfortunately, I'm not at liberty to talk about concrete things, but soon you'll be hearing about them as they become public.
One of in the discussion of the Ministry of Diaspora and how it relates with the diaspora itself, the diaspora being a large space, some had felt, or that it was mentioned in the same breath as sort of the diaspora was an investment opportunity into Armenia. Will the ministry have a special focus on economic investment with the diaspora? Any sort of ideas on that front?
Yeah, absolutely. The ministry is going to be paying special attention to economic development opportunities in partnership with the diaspora. So it's not so much about seeing the diaspora as an ATM. Those days are over. Today it's more about thinking about and setting policies around economic development that are in partnership with the diaspora. Now that also obviously includes financial, but it also includes human, educational, and cultural.
You earlier mentioned that the Ministry of Diaspora is now, it's not going to be a one-way street, and what you were just inferring there is that there is going to be a balance, a sharing that's going to take place. Can you talk a little bit about how you see some of that two-way process working, where it's not just going to be a ministry based and focused solely on Armenia, but also going to be focused on the diaspora? How do you see that working?
Well, we're discussing a few different formats for realizing that, but I think the most important principles there are making sure we're engaging with the diaspora, make sure we're engaging with the organizations in the diaspora, but also engaging with individuals in the diaspora, and especially youth in the diaspora, youth individuals that may have been left outside of the traditional diaspora organizations. Also keep in mind, there's no such thing as one diaspora. And even within the broader diasporas, there's, I guess we can say classical diaspora and new diaspora. So those also require different approaches to them, but all of those are going to be taken into account. Again, we haven't made any decisions yet on this, but we're discussing the best possible format in which to engage.
As you mentioned, the Armenian diaspora is not just one diaspora, it's many diasporas that make up the entire set of people that are outside of this country. Has the diaspora had expectations that are a little too grand, or that they're a little too unrealistic at this time with the Ministry of Diaspora, or do you think that they fall in line with what the diaspora, the Ministry of the Diaspora can potentially deliver?
Well, I think what has happened in the past is that the role and the mission of the ministry has not been properly defined or properly communicated. So I think we need to start from there. It's dreaming big is a good thing. That's how you have revolutions. That's how you make progress. So it's good to have big expectations. It's more important than that, however, is making sure that it's properly communicated. And first of all, for ourselves to first define what it is that the ministry is going to do, what it is that is the outside of the ministry's purview, or we do in collaboration with other ministries, other civil society organizations, and even out abroad.
Babken, I want to thank you very much for joining us here today. Very much appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. We were here with Babken DerGrigorian, the Deputy Minister of the Diaspora. CivilNet TV is focused on bringing you the information and the news from Armenia as it's happening. As we've done throughout the course of the new establishment of the government, we will continue to do the same going forward. Thank you again for watching. My name is Khazarian. We'll see you soon.